I can't hear a thing or understand anything.
We check. English is okay? C'è la traduzione in inglese, parlo in italiano così.
Is there English interpreting? Can you hear the English channel? Can you hear English? Yes. In that case, we'll carry on.
Grazie. A nome...
Okay, on behalf of Council, Mrs. Bogner-Strauss.
You have invited the Presidency to intervene in this debate. To begin with, I would like to underline the importance of common values such as democracy, the rule of law and human rights as cornerstones of the European Union. It is crucial that every Member State respects, protects and promotes them. Values like the rule of law and the separation of powers are not negotiable and have to be at the heart of our attention. It is of great importance to stay in constant dialogue and to cooperate in order to ensure the best standards and conditions for all citizens. The Council addressed the situation in Romania in its conclusions on the cooperation and verification mechanism adopted on December 12, 2017. The Council reiterated the importance for Romania to focus on further consolidation and to fully address the concerns and the recommendations set out by the Commission in its report on progress achieved in Romania under the cooperation verification mechanism. Of great value are also the widely acknowledged opinions of the Venice Commission. The Presidency is aware that the Romanian authorities are in constant contact with both the Venice Commission and the European Commission to find solutions to the issues raised. I trust that all sides are taking the issues raised in this dialogue seriously as they go to the heart of our commitment to this Union. In this sense, we hope that the ongoing exchange between the Romanian authorities and the Commission will continue to prove efficient in addressing these issues in a manner that leaves no doubt about our core values. I will listen attentively to your debate as well as to the Romanian Prime Minister's intervention. Thank you.
La parola ora al
I now call the First Vice President of the Commission, Frans Timmermans.
Presidente, we last discussed the state of the rule of law in Romania in February, and today is a useful opportunity to take stock of the developments which have taken place in the months since. I'll try and be as concise as I can. We're all aware that the initiatives taken by the Romanian authorities since 2017 as concerns the reform of the justice laws, the criminal procedure and criminal codes, and the processes regarding the judiciary have led to concerns from a wide range of stakeholders both inside and outside of Romania and the EU. Many Romanians are worried that the proposed changes to these laws may undermine the long-standing efforts in the fight against corruption and the independence of the judiciary. These are concerns the Commission very much shares. As guardian of the treaties, when it comes to the application of EU law and the respect of the EU fundamental values, the Commission intervenes on the basis of accurate and thorough legal analysis. It focuses on concrete national measures and it engages in a dialogue with the authorities. And in these matters, the Commission is politically colourblind and clinical in our approach. That is the case for Romania just as much as any other member state. So, with your permission, I will set out the main developments in Romania. First, the justice laws. The three justice laws, dating back to 2004, define the status of magistrates and organise the judicial system and the Superior Council of Magistracy. At the end of last year, the laws were amended by the Romanian Parliament. These amendments have been challenged several times before the Constitutional Court. These laws have attracted criticism from institutions inside Romania and from outside. The Council of Europe anti-corruption watchdog Greco adopted a very critical report in March. The Venice Commission's preliminary opinion issued in July was equally critical, with serious concerns about the independence of the judiciary, its efficiency and its quality. It made a series of recommendations. The final opinion is expected to be adopted later this month. I know this House will pay as close attention to that opinion as we will at the Commission. But unfortunately, the fact is that the Romanian Parliament so far has not shown signs of responding to the opinions and recommendations. Secondly, as concerns the overhaul of the criminal codes and the Code of Criminal Procedures. In May, the Romanian Parliament launched a procedure to amend the criminal codes and the Code of Criminal Procedures. They were passed in the months of June and July. The Romanian law enforcement authorities, as well as other member states, expressed their concerns. The amendments have been challenged before the Constitutional Court, and judgments are expected in mid-October. The Venice Commission is preparing another opinion on these amended codes, also expected to be adopted later in October. These laws are crucial for the capacity of prosecutors to investigate and judges to sentence high-level corruption, as well as for the ability of the judicial system to pursue crime effectively. The climate needed for reform has deteriorated due to the secret protocols between the prosecution and the intelligence services. I call on the Romanian authorities to conduct full and impartial investigations of this issue. Romanians deserve a law enforcement order with all authorities properly supervised and full judicial independence. The reform to the judicial laws and criminal codes are interlinked, and it must be avoided that they have a negative impact on the independence of the judiciary and their effectiveness to combat corruption. That is why the Commission has discussed this issue regularly with the Romanian government at the highest level and has made its concerns public. We have examined the text passed by the Romanian Parliament. To fully assess their impact, we are seeking further clarification on how specific elements of these laws should be interpreted. Thirdly, as concerns the procedure to dismiss the chief anti-corruption prosecutor and the evaluation of the general prosecutor, I would like to recall that the track record of the anti-corruption prosecution, the so-called DNA, was a central reason for the more positive assessment of Romania that the Commission made back in our Cooperation and Verification Mechanism report in January 2017. Moreover, robust and independent procedures for dismissal and appointment of top prosecutors have always been a key element in our recommendations. The Commission has also recommended that the Romanian authorities seek the help of the Venice Commission in this matter. This remains one of the outstanding recommendations under the Cooperation and Verification Mechanism. Honourable members, we are following the latest developments in Romania with concern. The independence of Romania's judicial system and its capacity to fight corruption effectively are essential cornerstones of a strong Romania in the European Union. We have seen substantial progress in the past, but things are now moving backwards in a way that would be damaging for the place that Romania has built as an EU member state in recent years. The Commission has repeatedly called on the Romanian authorities to rethink their course of action and to build a broad consensus on the way forward, and I want to reiterate that call today. I would stress once again that the Commission is always ready to cooperate with and support the Romanian authorities in this process. I trust this dialogue will continue, and we will be meticulous and precise in all the elements in the proposals that we would like to discuss with the Romanian authorities. The latest developments are a source of growing concern for the Commission. If adopted without changes, the combined effect of the amended justice laws and the criminal codes would affect the capacity of the justice system, including the prosecution service, to effectively fight against corruption and other crimes. This means backtracking from the situation that led the Commission to make a positive assessment in our report of January 2017. We will report on the situation in our next CVM report next month. You can see what our CVM progress report stated in January 2017 and what it did in the last report in November 2017. The situation has deteriorated. Rest assured, all developments will be thoroughly assessed and reflected in our upcoming report. President Juncker and I issued a joint statement already in January this year, setting out our concerns on the direction of travel. We stated clearly at that point that the irreversibility of the progress achieved so far under the CVM is an essential precondition to phase out the mechanism. Without that, we cannot phase out the mechanism. So, while we will continue pursuing our objective of a sustainably positive situation in a dialogue with the Romanian authorities, I wish also to be clear today. The Commission will draw the appropriate conclusions if the amendments to the justice law, criminal codes and laws on conflict of interest and corruption are promulgated without taking account of the concerns. Concretely, this means following up our recommendations from January 2017 CVM report, the recommendations expressed by the Venice Commission and by Greco. As a guardian of the treaties, we will not hesitate to take action where necessary to ensure compatibility with the treaties. Indeed, the Commission will use all the means at its disposal, be it under CVM or otherwise. The Commission urges Romania to put the reform process back on track immediately. This means going forwards, not backwards, and abstaining from any steps which reverse the progress accomplished over the past years. I honestly think there is still an opportunity to turn things around. The laws are not yet promulgated, and therefore it is not yet too late for the Romanian institutions to act to turn the situation around. As always, we stand ready to help, but the responsibility and the power to deliver change lies firmly with the Romanian institutions, and I call again on them to take the right steps now. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
Thank you very much. Now the floor to the Prime Minister of Romania, our former colleague, Viorica Dăncilă. Thank you very much and welcome back to the Parliament.
Domnule prim vicepreședinte,
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President of the Commission, distinguished members of the European Parliament, on behalf of Romania, I would like to thank you for having invited me here. And I am not here in order to give account. I am here because I respect you. But I request the same respect for the Romanian nation, whom I represent here. Let me start with an essential question. For whom are we trying to build a functional justice system in Romania? For the CVM, for the European institutions, for the magistrates, for the politicians? Of course not. We must have fair justice for the sake of the citizens, because they are the beneficiaries of the measures taken either in the European Parliament or in the national parliaments. And the discussion should start from the citizens. The justice system should offer guarantees that the citizens' rights and the laws are respected, and whoever breaks the laws shall be punished. It is quite honest to put the question, how did the CVM defend Romanian citizens from losing their rights? A lot has been said in those reports about institutions, about the procedure to appoint magistrates, about the fight against corruption. This is all very well. But I never saw in those reports any mention of human rights being trampled, of secret protocols signed between the intelligence services and the judicial institutions. Based on those protocols, secret protocols, millions of Romanians have been tapped by the secret services on behalf of the fight against corruption. There are court decisions that show how evidence was forged, how the transcripts of phone taps have been altered in order to create false guilty people, or how witnesses were blackmailed into giving false testimony. None of those were mentioned in the CVM reports. This means that this mechanism has missed the goal for which it was created, and I officially request to be told who wrote the CVM reports, who provided the data, and who omitted, out of negligence or out of ill will, omitted to mention these facts which I mentioned and which are unacceptable in the European Union. If we want to be honest, we should start from these serious cases of abuse that have happened on the territory of the European Union. The Venice Commission said that in the Soviet system, the attorney's office was a means to control the judicial power. In the past 4 years, over 3,000 magistrates have been prosecuted by the DNA, by the anti-corruption section. Basically, half of the magistrates of Romania have had files, criminal files hanging over their heads, which were used in order to influence those judges to give rulings that were decided outside of the courts of law. And it's not just me who's saying that. Listen to the magistrates' associations of Romania, because they say the same thing. And through these forged cases were used in order to remove a judge from the Constitutional Court, to remove a vice president of the Supreme Council of Magistracy, 4 judges from the High Court of Cassation, several judges from higher courts, 1 general prosecutor and 1 head of a senior attorney's office. In the end, all these people were acquitted or their files were dismissed. However, they had lost their job. The new laws on justice give back independence to the justices. There will be no politician making decisions about the appointment or the dismissal of judges. Independence is total. It's not at all restricted. And I assure you that we have all the good faith and we will take into account the recommendation of the Venice Commission. However, there is a good part of this day. I have a chance here today to inform you all about the cases of abuse that have been perpetrated in Romania. From now on, nobody will be able to ignore those situations. Nobody will be able to talk about the situation of the justice system in Romania without talking about these cases of abuse, unless, of course, it's all just a political game about the justice system. But ask yourselves, why were these things kept from you? Why didn't they tell you anything about these cases if they were also legal and legitimate? Ask yourselves these questions before throwing the stone at Romania. As far as the 10th of August protest meeting, I will only say a few words. The Romanian forces, the Romanian police are accused of being violent against protesters who were violent in their turn and who were trying to invade the government building. I haven't seen the same attitude towards what happened last week in Brussels or to whatever happened in France, in Spain and other countries where the riot police have intervened in the same way, with the same means and following the same procedures as the Romanian riot police did this autumn. I cannot accept that the Romanian riot police should be accused of using procedures that are being used everywhere in Europe. In conclusion, let me ask you one thing. Do not deny Romania things that are permitted to other member states of the Union, and do not allow that in Romania things should happen that are unacceptable in other member states. We want to be your partners, but we want to be equal partners. No one, never, will be able to turn Romania back from its European road. Thank you.
La parola all'onorevole.
Next, Mr. González Pons, who has 3 minutes.
Prime Minister, welcome to this Parliament, which is the Parliament of Romanian people also. We are not here to be a court. That is not the role of the Parliament, and it should never be, in any case. We are here to discuss issues that affect all of us, no matter where we come from. And the independence of the judiciary power and the rule of law are indeed that kind of European issues. When Romania joined the Union in 2007, Romanian judges became European judges. It means that they have to defend not only Romanian law, but European law too, and that we have to defend them. Europe is not a single market only. We are also a community of shared values, and when our countries signed the treaties, we signed for those values too, for all of them. So this is not an East-West issue. This is an European issue. I'm telling you this as a representative of Spain, a southern country that has had its own democratic transition. So we know how difficult it is to shift from dictatorship to democracy. It takes time, it requires sacrifices, it costs pain. It's a difficult journey. That is why we cannot understand the changes proposed by your government, which are putting in danger the balance of powers and the independence of justice in Romania. That is why we cannot understand the extreme reaction of your government that tragic day of the 10th of August, when thousands of Romanians coming from diaspora were trying just to be heard. And that's why we cannot understand the silence and the complicity of those that are concerned of rule of law in some countries, but not in others. Of course, you can ignore our critics, but you should never ignore the voice of your own people. Romanians fought for their liberties against communism. They tore down a tyranny and built up a democracy. They are a brave and a decent people. Prime Minister, and you are ignoring them. Tell me, why don't you want to listen to your people? Tell me, what interests are hidden behind the actions of your government? Tell me, what are you afraid of? That's what this Parliament wants and needs to know. Listen to the people's voice, Madam Prime Minister. They just want integrity, transparency and justice. They just want to have a better future in their own country, not out of it. Nothing more, but nothing less. Madam Prime Minister, you have two options. You can listen to this Parliament, you can listen to the European Commission, you can listen to the Romanian Parliament, you can listen to your people, or you can ignore all the democratic controls. But with all due respect, this Parliament will remain, will wait in the side of the noble and proud people of Romania. There is not another option for us. You should understand it.
La parola all'onorevole.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Weidenholzer.
Thank you, Herr Präsident.
Thank you very much, President, Prime Minister. For us, Socialists and Democrats, democracy in the state of the rule of law is at the centre. And this is universal. These principles go for all member states, regardless of whether they're in the east or the west of Europe, and regardless of who is in control. We are pleased to see these debates taking place, and are very pleased also that the Prime Minister is here. We're very concerned about the reports that are coming from Romania. And we want a detailed breakdown of what's going on, without ifs and buts, not because we're against Romania, but because we want to see the country taking a positive turn. It's a country that has huge potential for the future, and that's something that can only happen if we don't stand in the way of liberal democracy. The starting point was difficult for Romania, so the CVM mechanism was brought in because of that. And we heard very carefully from the Vice President on this. And we await with great interest the outcome of the Venice Commission. And it's important to find out what the secret services are doing, because the fight against corruption is something that is central to the independence of the judiciary. We also expect that the President of the country will be at the next plenary and will tell us about what's going on. We hope that we can work in a constructive way to draw up the planned resolution that the Libe committee is the lead committee on.
Onorevole Macovei.
Ms. McAvey is next.
Mulțumesc.
Thank you. Dragnea and Tăriceanu are now attacking the European Union because lies and their fake attitudes have been unveiled, but Romania will remain in Europe, in democracy and in liberty. Romanians are now suffering because of this government that is working against them. Romania is not a group of corrupt politicians. Romania is made up of honest people wherever they are in the world, and many of them left Romania because of the corruption, but they want to go back home. The government used batons and grenades against their own citizens, and reports of the 10th of August do not lie. Independent press is also under threat at the orders of a criminal convicted felon. Dragnea decided to prepare laws in order to gag the independent press. Justice is the PSD-ALDE coalition's first archenemy. They changed the laws of justice to be able to control magistrates. They amended criminal codes to be able to evade being sanctioned for their offenses and to avoid investigations. And now they try to control prosecutor's office to be able to get their sentences reviewed and get out of prison or avoid prison altogether. Amnesty laws or amendments to those laws will get people to the streets again. Romanians are not asleep. Romania is alive, is very alive with the people, and will always protect democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verhofstadt. 1 minute.
Romania, colleagues, has, in my opinion, not one but two problems. Yes, widespread corruption and also Secret Service out of hand, Mr. Timmermans. And a state in the state. And my message today is that both problems need to be tackled, that Romania has to end the bad tradition of what once was the Securitate, a secret service instrumentalized by one side of the political establishment to hit the other side, and sometimes the sides are changing. As has to stop, Prime Minister, also a totally inappropriate reaction to this, weakening the fight against high-level corruption, undermining even the prosecution of it. That's the way, I should say, Orban and Kaczynski lead their countries. That's not the way we liberals should govern. Not in our name, and certainly not with our name. So may I give you one advice, Prime Minister? Don't follow the bad Hungarian and Polish examples. Embrace fully the remarks and the recommendations of the Venice Commission, and let them systematically review your legislative proposals. Because the fight against corruption must be strengthened and not be weakened. And the independence of the courts must be guaranteed and not undermined. And yes, the murky power of the new old Securitate needs definitely to be broken. The one is not in contradiction with the other.
Onorevole
Skakeller.
Romania has a long, proud tradition. Romania has a very long and proud tradition of fighting for freedom and civil liberties, overthrowing a dictatorship after 42 years. And the efforts to move towards democracy and civil liberties cannot be overestimated. It's harsh, but Romania did it. Democratic institutions have been developed, and your country has joined the European Union. And it is therefore even more worrying to see that there is a real backlash. Because with the reforms of the criminal code, your government makes it legal for officials to abuse their power. Your government will allow convicted criminals to get away with the stolen money and not have it confiscated. You are de facto legalizing corruption with that reform. But corruption makes people lose the trust in the state and in democracy. Money is being diverted from the benefit of the many to the pockets of the few. Romanian citizens already now lose 5 times more money to corruption than the state spends on hospitals and healthcare. And the Romanians do care. They went on the streets to ask for democracy, for good governance from you, Prime Minister, as is their right, as is the right of any European citizens. But instead of listening to them, you actually sent the police in to attack them, tear gassing an entire public square. And even further, your government is now planning to reduce the freedom of assembly, making it obligatory to have an authorization. But that would be the first European Union member state to require an authorization. But do you really want to go that low? And colleagues, Commissioner, Romanian citizens are asking for freedom, nothing else. Freedom from corruption, freedom of assembly, freedom from discrimination. And Europe is built on that freedom. And as someone who did grow up in the Eastern Bloc, I can testify to how important that freedom is. And this freedom, democracy and civil liberties are being put into question in more and more member states. And as European institutions, as European deputies, we have to defend the rights of Romanian citizens, as well as the right of every European citizen, be it in Hungary, be it in Poland, be it in Austria, be it anywhere. There is no second-class citizenship. And let's not wait until it's too late. Let's not wait until we have to start yet another Article 7 procedure. Now is the time to change, and now is the time to act. Thank you.
Ja. Vielen Dank. Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keller. Ms. Spinelli, 2 minutes, please.
La Romania scende.
Well, people have taken to the streets in Romania. I'd like to look at a few points of things that have happened since then. The fight against corruption and for a free judiciary is crucial for the rule of law in Romania. But protests have been extremely fragmented. For some people, corruption leads to inequality. For other people, it stands in the way of the neoliberal agenda and justifies more power for the services. And there's a false unity here, and the movement is weak in terms of power play. And there are dark areas here. Pro-PSD people are spoken out against as being stupid peasants, and the opposition to the current government hasn't been convincing the poorest sectors of country folk. Let's not forget here who's been left behind in the single market. Thirdly, the movement isn't just fighting corruption, it's trying to fight constitutionalization of the family as only being a union between men and women. Our Charter of Human Rights does not impose anything to do with marriage not being allowed between homosexuals. The defence of the rule of law is a very just fight, but this also this applies across the board. Looking at the Bucharest manifestations in August, President, you talked about the shocking images of peaceful protesters who were hit by the police. We need to open an inquest straight away about this, and this also goes for the peaceful protesters in Catalonia who were beaten and the leader put in prison. And we need to look at what's happening here, and we don't want the same situation as Spain. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spinelli. 2 minutes, Mr. Corral.
Grazie Presidente, buongiorno Primo Ministro.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Since we've come into Parliament, we have stressed how important the rule of law in the EU is, and we've asked for constant monitoring of Member States and to be able to take action when there are violations of this. We're concerned about what we've been reading about, what's been happening in Romania, and I'm scared that the reform of the penal code carried out by the current government will not only undermine independence of the judiciary in favour of corruption, but weaken penal cooperation in the EU and allow for people to go unpunished in Romania in corruption. We would ask for the prescription of 1 year to be lifted for the people that are under that are being looked at the moment, and also for the penalty to the abuse of the lack of penalty to be lifted for those people that are being looked at. In Italy, we're doing the opposite. We must make sure that people are punished for these serious crimes, and make sure that things are properly prosecuted and taken to the courts. Otherwise, criminals benefit from how long these procedures are drawn out. We need to make sure that we have priority for pursuing those that are corrupt, and make sure that people don't get into public administration otherwise. Fighting against money laundering, I'm rapporteur for that, is essential as well, that these people don't get into public office, and people that have been condemned can't get back into laundering of money. It's important to keep criminals out of public administration. That needs to be the objective
Prime Minister, of Romania and the whole of the EU, the Commission needs to keep a watchful eye over the rule of law being respected. Member States need to properly implement this important instrument across the EU, the Directive Against Laundering, and the fifth directive against this, which has important provisions against people that are politically against the government, and this goes particularly for Romania. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kollege Corrao. Herr Kollege.
Thank you. For a minute, Mr. Bay. After Hungary and Poland, it's Hungary that's in the firing line for the Commission. As in Poland, the Eurocrats are criticizing the government for reforming the judiciary, which apparently endangers the rule of law. But this is just a fig leaf. I saw this when the Civil Liberties Committee visited Warsaw. What the Commission can't stand is for peoples to take democratic decisions and for them to decide for themselves. It's been acknowledged that family policy is a member state competence, and we've got the LGBTIQ lobby, and according to them, you can't oppose same-sex marriage. In the forthcoming days, the Romanian people will be called to a referendum to validate the change to the constitution. In France, you can still be against these identitarian politics and hard-line policies. We need to respect the democratic choice of Romania. Even if Mr. Timmermans doesn't like it, it's up to the Romanians to decide what future they want for their children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bay. 1.5 minutes, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Prime Minister, 20 years ago, I worked in Romania, in Bucharest, on the laws that became your anti-money laundering legislation. I worked with intelligent, smart, and caring lawyers alongside me. We worked on the international rules that finally became your own legislation. What I also remember of my time in Romania was how proud they were of you becoming an independent country, how you could once again vote for your own Prime Minister, such as yourself. And when you and your government stood and received over 45% of your nation-state's votes only a few years ago, you became a leader of a country that was also proud. Be in no doubt, today you are here to be once more one of those prime ministers who are to be attacked, bullied and abused by those people on the front bench for having one simple thing: the audacity to actually stand up to them and their anti-democratic ways. You are a prime minister who has a vote. You are a prime minister that has received the backing of its people. You are standing up to those people in this room who have one vision, and that is their own vision. Now you can go away from here understanding that they don't really want to support you. They're attacking you, the Hungarians, the Romanians. But you have a responsibility to your people first, not to this lot here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Nica.
Thank you, First Vice President. Thank you, First Vice President, Madam Prime Minister, dear colleagues. I want to make something very clear for everyone. Romania will never accept to be a pawn in any game. We understand that some member states have certain concerns. However, we only ask what the First Vice President has said. Each and every country should be judged based on its own merits. We in Romania are trying to see to it that all the things which have a connection with our dark past, with our former perverted judiciary system, with the ministers of justice who have turned prosecutors in their political servants, with all those things that have turned the respectable judges into people who are afraid, of prosecutors who have been forced to concoct criminal prosecutions, of the system in which people were being blackmailed. We're trying to get rid of all these things so that everybody understands that justice is only served in court, not based on secret protocols with the intelligence services, based on darkroom deals. And I welcome the change of tone of the European Commission, and please be aware that the past will not come back despite the desperate efforts of MEPs Preda and Macovei, who are those who have turned the Romanian justice system into a shameful system. These things we do not tolerate. We are going to change them, and we're going to change them according to democratic laws. Thank you.
Mr. Nika, will you take a question from Mr. Hickmark?
No.
No.
Nika.
Mr. Nika. Mr. Nika. Mr. Nika. Mr. Bostinaro. I don't need a lecture from you. I am watching very carefully what is being called out. You can put a question in the Parliament, but as long as, in terms of form and content, it's done sensibly. And I will decide that you cannot call out from the sidelines. And I was asking Mr. Nika if he will take a question from Mr. Hökmark. Mr. Nika. I take it that you don't need any advice from your Prime Minister about answering this question. Mr. Hökmark.
Mr. Speaker, I have been more and more surprised about the debate here. I heard the Social Democrat group applaud the extremes up here when defending corruption in Romania. And the question I would like to raise is, aren't you feeling concerned about a government that is not sufficiently fighting corruption, that is fighting those who are fighting corruption? Couldn't you answer to that?
Deci acest lucru face parte din ceea ce...
This is part of the fake news campaign. Has anybody told you that in the past 5 years, 98% of the corruption cases have ended in acquittals? Has anybody told you that all those people of whom the European Commission was also informed, all those people accused of corruption have been acquitted? In the past 6 years, the Anti-Corruption Division has lost 200 cases, 200 acquittals. Anti-corruption means that people who are guilty should be tried and prosecuted and convicted, and innocent people should not be prosecuted. This is our slogan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nika. 1 minute, Rebega.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, I will start by saying that in recent years Romania has seen political decisions imposed on itself that breached European standards when it comes to the rule of law. These decisions were taken by the very leader of the PSD, Liviu Dragnea, in order to solve his own personal problems. And those who support him here or in the country know this very well. But I must point out before the European Parliament that I will never agree to have Romanian citizens punished for what politicians do in their country. No, we do not have to impose sanctions that will affect the innocent citizens of Romania that never supported Dragnea's scheming. If his colleagues in the ruling coalition are in cahoots with him, we have to take measures against them and not against the citizens of Romania. So I urge our SND and ALDE colleagues to stand up to their Romanian colleagues who support the measures taken by their political leader. And let us hope that Romania is a pro-European country.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Rebega. Mr. Rebega, you take a blue card from Mr. Cover.
Thank you, Mr. Rebega, for taking my blue card. This is one of a series of debates that have been taking place in here concerning the rule of law in a particular EU member state. Is this not an indication of the increasing authoritarian approach across the European Union, and how the UK, which has always been a bastion of free speech and democracy, has made the correct choice by voting to leave this increasingly federalist and undemocratic organisation? Thank you.